What is up, Navigating Academia family? I hope you guys are doing great today. It is a pleasure to be able to be coming to you here on this Saturday. Guys, I've had an exhausting week. I've been in the car for about 18 hours, driving around everywhere, doctor's appointments, all kinds of stuff, doing some real estate hunting. And now it's Saturday night. I'm exhausted. There is nothing that I would rather be doing than to be able to be chatting with you guys. So I hope that those of you who are undergraduates or those of you who are interested in going to graduate school, maybe you're in grad school right now, will be able to join me today. What I'm going to plan on doing is to be able to spend a half an hour or so kind of doing my little monologue and then spend the last 15 to 30 minutes answering your questions. So if you have questions, make sure to write them down. Make sure to be able to bring them to me because I'm excited to be able to help you guys out today, okay? Now, just to be able to kind of start the video, remember to hit that like button if you're starting at the very beginning of the video with us. It helps us out a ton in terms of the YouTube algorithm, also is kind of repayment for my time. Because this is the service that I give for you guys, and I really love doing it for you. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you've not already subscribed to the channel, but you enjoy our content, if you've watched at least 2 videos, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel as well. And if you'd like to help us out even more, just take a link to any of our videos and share them on any of your social media accounts. Remember, you can always book a one-on-one session with me for me to be able to help you get into grad school, take a look at any of your materials. Right now, I'm getting a lot of requests for mock doctoral dissertation master's thesis interviews. So that's been a lot of fun for me over the last few weeks. So if you need help with that, I can also tailor a defense specifically for you and we can go through and practice. Make sure you're ready for your big day. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Today, what I thought I would do for you guys, when I was at the gym today, I was thinking about kind of some ideas for videos. And, the big idea that I came up with initially was kind of like, should you go to graduate school? I've been having this conversation with so many people over the past week and a half or so. And I thought to myself, and a lot of friends of mine who are actually academia YouTubers. And so I thought, I was like, should I do a video on that? Should I do like a live stream or something? And then I realized, I was like, you know what? There are a lot of great reasons to go to grad school that I really believe in. And there's some reasons that I think that I've considered, that other people have considered, that I'm just not convinced that they're great reasons to be able to go. And a lot of people think that they're valid still, though. So I figured that I would share with you guys what I perceive to be kind of like the 5 best reasons to go to grad school and what I would personally consider the 5 worst reasons to be able to go to graduate school. And you guys know me. I love you to death. And, this is one of these things where I always try to shoot you guys straight. But like I said, anything that I'm saying, if you guys have any questions or comments about it, I do have my chat open right over here. So anything that you guys want to ask me or any comments you guys want to make, I'm paying attention to it right now. So you guys let me know however I can help. Give me one second. I'm just going to make sure that I can actually see the chat. It has this thing that says top chat. So this is now what I kind of usually see. Let's see, participants, pop out chat, pop out chat. There we go. Awesome. Hey, Grace. Awesome. Now I got this. Woo. All right. So, Grace, what do you think? So, Grace says, so glad you're covering this topic today. So, Grace, what would you say? And everybody who's joining us right now, Grace, what would you say? What do you think is the number one best reason, Grace, to go to grad school? And what do you think is the number one worst reason to go to grad school? And to everybody else who's watching as well, you guys can type it in. Just let me know your opinion because it's very valuable to me, right? I care what you guys think, and I care about you guys participating. So go ahead, anybody. And Grace, you specifically, you got to tell me. In the meanwhile, guys, I'll go ahead. I got the chat right here or whatever. I'll continue with kind of the list that I came up with. But I'm sure there's way more amazing reasons to go to grad school and other things that you should take into consideration about maybe why it's not the best choice. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay. So number one, in terms of the best reason to go to grad school, this one may be a little bit obvious, but it's if your career requires it, right? So for example, here in the United States, let's say you want to be, for example, a clinical psychologist, right? So that's my background is in clinical psych, specifically forensic psych. If you want to be a clinical psychologist, yes, there are some states where you can actually practice as a master's level clinician, where you kind of have that, MS or in some cases even an MA in clinical psych, but you do require direct supervision by someone who is licensed at the doctoral level, right? So you kind of can't have your own private practice unless you have it under the supervision of somebody else. So you could have a practice with someone else, but you kind of couldn't do it only by yourself, right? So for the most part, though, you need the doctorate in the United States, right? APA accredited program. There are rare circumstances in states like California where you can still have what's called a BBS certified program, but it's not APA accredited. But again, like I personally do not recommend going to any program in the United States that is not APA accredited. And you guys know from other kind of videos and all that I've made kind of why that is. But that's the thing. There are a lot of career paths out there that do not require graduate degree programs. So, for example, I have so many friends who are probation and parole officers or are correctional officers. And in cases like that, some people end up going getting masters or even doctorates in criminal justice, right? But the thing is that you're not usually required to be able to get one of those degrees to be able to participate, right, in that career field specifically. And maybe if you want to be the warden at a prison or one of these sorts of things, then maybe that's something that you want to look into. But it's not something that traditionally you have to get to be able to be, let's say, a correctional officer, probation parole officer, and so forth. Okay, so that's number one. One of the best reasons to go to grad school is because, frankly, you have no other choice. If you want to go into that specific career, you can't be an undergraduate in the United States and do some sort of like a pre-med program, right? It's like pre-medical school program, and then go and be a surgeon, right? No, you need to go to medical school, right? So if you want to be a surgeon, that's what you got to do, right? Not many options there. So that's a great reason to be able to go to graduate school. And that's one thing I always recommend people look into, especially guys, if it's something where you're just not sure whether or not you need that graduate degree or not. It's a great idea to be able to take a look at kind of the paths that other people have blazed in your field before. And if there's anybody that's in your life who you really trust to be able to shoot you straight, or they just have a career that you really respect, it's a good thing to be able to ask them. Now, it's one of these situations where I would always ask a few people, why do I recommend that? Because at the end of the day, sometimes if you ask somebody who, for instance, like I had a child psychologist who was very, very influential to me, and he was much older than I was. So I was in like my late teens, early 20s. And when he was a mentor of mine, he was easily in his 60s at the time. So he's much older than me. And of course, when he got into the field was very different, right, than it was when I ended up going through it. And so because of that, some of his advice still to this day is gold to me. And some of his advice was a little bit outdated. And I ended up learning that kind of along the path of my career over the last, it's 17 years or 18 years in the field, which is wild, right? I don't know how that happened. This year also is going super fast, as I'm sure you guys can appreciate. So that's best reason number one to go to grad school. Number two, best reason to be able to go to graduate school is that you can afford it. You can afford it. You can afford it with no debt, right? So like no student loan debt, or right, if you can't do it with no student loan debt, right? I'm talking from the US perspective. Other places, my second doctorate, I'm not kidding. I did it. I think I paid like 500 euros or like 1,500 euros or something for my second PhD in Germany. That's insane. Right, my first PhD was very expensive. Right, my second PhD was considerably less expensive. Right, but that's the thing, right? So either number one, you can go with no debt. Maybe you have a huge, huge blessing from your family, such that they can pay for graduate school. Which, by the way, if that happened to you, you need to go and thank your parents or thank your grandparents or whoever, right? You need to just thank them a gigantic amount. Most people are not blessed enough to be able to have that opportunity, right? So if you're able to do it with no debt, this would be a phenomenal thing, right? And that would be a reason to go to grad school, right? But you can also go to grad school if you can demonstrate mathematically, okay, that it makes financial sense. Okay, what do I mean by that? There are a lot of graduate degrees, both master's degrees and doctoral degrees, where if you take a look at the median earnings before and after, so at like the bachelor's level versus the master's or the doctoral level, right? There is like no difference. Or if there is a difference, it's like a 10% difference. Whereas maybe before you were making 50 to 60K, and now you're making 55 to 66K, something like this, right? That is not worth it, right? You have the possibility of losing out on, let's say that you're doing a master's degree and it's a 2-year master's degree, right? Or a 3-year master's degree. Even a 1-year master's degree, right? The amount of time that you're spending on that degree and the amount of money that you're spending, you are losing out on the opportunity to generate new income, right? Or to be able to spend your time either on side hustles or doing an even better job at whatever the job is that you've got right now, building, 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 right? And that's incredibly important to be able to think about the quote unquote opportunity cost of going to graduate school. Okay, but in some cases it makes tremendous sense. And again, this is something to do a lot of background research on before you kind of consider going to grad school or applying to graduate school. It's really important that it makes financial sense. This is something that, including for me, before going to grad school, I kind of didn't really think about it, which was a total mistake on my end. I still remember the day that, so my father growing up, so he was a business guy. And growing up, we grew up kind of like middle class, and then my father was a business guy, and he ended up becoming successful. And all of a sudden, we had a better life than we did when I was super young, and it was a huge blessing for the family. What happened for me though was that I didn't realize just how much money it takes to be able to have here in the United States a good life. It is ridiculously expensive. And so, because of that, I remember what my postdoc salary was. And the number of multiples of my postdoc salary that my father had to make to be able to just provide us with that upbringing is insane. And I remember having almost like a straight up panic attack when I ended up hearing that. Right, it was like super super nerve wracking to be able to hear that. So that's what I would say, is that you need to figure out whether this makes financial sense. Doing things like budgeting and like running the economics of these things, it's not sexy and it's not fun, but it is necessary. This is something that I talk a lot with my mentees about when I do consultation with them. And as always, guys, if you're interested in getting mentored by me, just set up a one-on-one session at www.jphoenixsingh.com. I'll put it here in the chat window so you guys can check that out, right? And I would love to be able to get together with you guys. And that's one of the things that we're going to do. We are specifically going to go through and figure out whether or not it makes financial sense or not for you to be able to go to graduate school in the longer term. Okay. This is something that's really hard for people to kind of do on their own. And so in this case, I'm going to do my very best to be able to help you out. Okay. So the third best reason to be able to go to graduate school is if you don't have any significant personal obligations or responsibilities right now. Life is both long and short at the same time. And obviously, people have different priorities at different times in their life. Sometimes family takes precedent. Maybe, God forbid, you have a sick parent or a sick family member. Maybe you have a brother or a sister or a cousin or somebody else that, medically speaking, you need to be taking care of them, which I have a lot of respect for. Maybe it's something where you are a single parent, right? Or you're just a parent, period. You have significant responsibilities. The idea of kind of packing up all of your things and moving somewhere else, or the idea of, hey, I'm going to school full time, I don't have to work. Or I can work part-time because I've got the flexibility to get into my car and go to class whenever I need to. Sometimes that flexibility just is not there. So it is a good reason to go to graduate school if right now is a time in your life when you have a maximal amount of flexibility. Now, this obviously could be when you're quite young. This could be when you get a little bit older, right? There's all sorts of different times in life. There's a time for everything. There's a season for everything. And just because you may see friends or family members or people you look up to going down the path of graduate school right now doesn't mean now's the right time for you. But it also means that if other people are prioritizing other things right now, that doesn't have to be you. If you have that flexibility, that is a good justification to be able to kind of throw yourself at graduate school right now, because grad school is super hard, right? It's totally different than undergrad. It's totally different than anything professionally you will have done in the past, unless you've already done a doctorate, let's say, in the past, in which case you probably know what you're doing. But outside of that, this is like a little mini Mount Everest, and I want to help you climb it. Okay, so that's what I would say. Number 4 is, in terms of best reasons to go to grad school, is you're accepted into a top tier program with a great supervisor. Now, to be honest with you, if you watch my other videos, you know that what is a top tier program, right? Totally depends on the kind of degree that you are going for. So usually if it's a research-based program, to be honest with you, I don't care about the name of the program. I care about the name and reputation of the supervisor, right? It is really the only thing that makes sense. For example, in my field, which is forensic psych, right? So a subfield of clinical psych, there are a few universities, I won't name them, and they're not famous universities at all. In fact, they're universities that I have no doubt that 90% of you have never heard of unless you're in forensic psych. But if I were to say the names of those universities to anybody who's within that field, This is something where you would almost immediately be impressed. And honestly, if I were to see that you were at that program, I would also end up saying, who are you working with there? Right. And you guys would end up telling me who you were working with. And I know the faculty members there. I would be very impressed that you are working with somebody that I know, like, and trust. So if you want to stay within the field and you've gotten into what is a top program in your field that's kind of recognized, usually because of the faculty members who are there, or if you've got a faculty supervisor somewhere who's just absolutely phenomenal. And remember, the way that you end up evaluating that is essentially based on three things, right? So essentially, you need to establish a goodness of fit between three things. So your and their population of interest in terms of what you're researching or who you're going to be working with, clinical or a practical phenomenon, whatever that happens to be, and also a methodology of some sort. Could be a statistical methodology, like maybe they're super into systematic reviewing and meta-analysis, and that's what you're into as well. Or it could actually be a device, something like a electron mice microscopy, right? I don't even know how I pronounce that, right? So using electron microscopes, or using fMRIs or positron emission tomography or any of these things, right? It could also be a piece of equipment like that. But if you can establish the goodness of fit between those three things, right, and your supervisor, so get that high specificity fit, that's a great reason to be able to go to graduate school if you have somebody like that. And remember, my recommendation in terms of choosing supervisors, always use something like go to YouTube, find a podcast where they're being interviewed, take a look at their personalities, and obviously, if you can meet them in person, this is critical because remember, one of the two biggest ways to get into grad school is personal connections, right? Personal connections and publications are like legit the keys to the kingdom. Okay. So, and finally, number five, best reasons to be able to go to graduate school. Number five is that you recognize that you can be better, right? There, you have so much potential, right, to be able to become something greater than you currently are, right? And you're committed to learning both from others and also learning how to learn. I do hate the phrase learn how to learn. I really don't like that phrase. I think it's really like kitsch, right? Really cliche. But there's a lot of truth to it at the end of the day. But that's the key thing. There's some people, like I think I was, to be honest with you guys, like before going to grad school, where I did really well undergrad. I was super lucky in that regard, and I just thought that I was the ish. Like I thought I was amazing. I was egotistical. I had my long hair. I was playing in these alternative rock bands. I was a stand-up comic for 3 years when I lived in Boston. I love being in front of people. I was that guy. And when I went to grad school, it was something where I legit was pretty egotistical and I was pretty big headed, and that did not serve me well, like at all, right? But it was definitely, see, Grace Fun's funny. Yeah, if you guys want to see here, wait, give me a second. I can show you guys. I've got some photos that I recently like rediscovered. Okay, this is great. So I'm going to see if I can zoom in. This is a band that I was in, right? So this is me in the black in the middle, if you guys can check it out, right? What's up? Exactly. Ryan knows what's up, right? So that's me or whatever in the black, if you guys can check it out, right? That was my band. The band legit was named after a child development term called a patchwork self. The guys in the band didn't know. Don't tell them if you know them. So anyway, right? But that was me in graduate school. That was literally when I was at Oxford. You can imagine how much my supervisor and everybody in the Department of Psychiatry at Oxford loved seeing me come into the department looking like that with my fingerless gloves and my suspenders down around my hips. True story. True story. Yeah, yeah. Grace is like, what? Yeah, yeah. Different world at the time. So that's the thing, though, is that to be honest, when I started grad school, I don't think that I thought that I could be better. I thought that I was already at the pinnacle in terms of learning from other people. Um, there's this bad habit that people have, and that I had as well, where basically when we're applying, especially in our statements of purpose, and if you guys ever need help with writing one, like let me know. I of course don't write things for people, but I read, I give comprehensive feedback, all that great stuff, and I can teach you exactly how to structure one to be able to get into programs. The idea is that when you're writing up a statement of purpose, it's really important to understand the verbiage that you use, and you cannot use verbiage like, I'm interested in working with, like literally working with you, right? I want to work with Professor da 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 da. No, you don't want to work. What? No, right? Work with. No, you're going to work under the person. Remember, right? The general and the soldier, right? Grad school supervisors want soldiers. They're not looking for some code general to give them ideas, right? academics are super arrogant, right? I'm an academic, trust me, I'm aware, right? And I was too. It took me a long time to break that habit for myself. The only way, if you guys want to know how I broke it, literally was spending like an unbelievable amount of time with clinicians in clinical settings. Why? Because I had to go through this transformational process of realizing that these are folks who I would never see present at a conference. They would never get some sort of academic award that I was obsessed with collecting these silly awards, right? No joke. The one award I was most proud of winning, it's a plaque. I have it in my other room, right? It's like a wooden plaque with the medal on it, right? Like the engraved thing. No joke. Later in my life, I was the executive director of a national association. And what happened was that one of my jobs was to be able to essentially get these awards for the national conference we would have every year. And no joke, guys, I went to www.awards.com. I found the same freaking plaque, okay, for $49.99. It's like $49, right? It was on sale as well. So I legit worked my butt off for 5 years straight, publishing as much as I could, all these things for a on sale $49.99 plaque. That's sad, right? And when I realized this, and I remember going outside on my balcony in Zurich when I was in Switzerland, I looked to the left and I looked to the right. And seriously, guys, what I remember is that I realized there are so many people right on my street. There were easily maybe 1,200 people, like 1,200 people on my street at least. And I knew for a fact that there were about 1,200 members of this major association for forensic psychologists that honestly, guys, I was so young at the time, I was early 20s. I really wanted to impress these people, right? It's something that happens to all of us, right, in our 20s. We really, whether or not, we're trying to be badasses like I was, as you saw in that photo, or whether it's something where we're actually like really nervous and low self-esteem of these things, regardless of which end of the spectrum you're on, we want to impress the other people who are dominant in our field at the time. And I realized, looking up and down the street, am I literally going to spend the rest of my life trying to literally impress the people on my street, which is one street in one city, in one part of one country on one continent? What? That's insane, right? But that was the thing, is I was so prepossessed, I was so obsessed with this notion of impressing all these people. It didn't make any sense whatsoever, right? And that is what it took to finally break myself, right, from this illusion of the importance of things like these awards and stuff like this, right? And recognizing that no matter where you are and how much you've done, you can do so much more. You can be so much more than you are at the end of undergrad. Even if you've, been out in the field, or even if, you're coming back to grad school after 10 years, the idea that you recognize, not out of humility towards a supervisor, but out of humility towards yourself, that you can be more and build more, etc. That is a great reason to be able to go to graduate school. Okay. So to me, those are the 5 best reasons to go to grad school. And guys, welcome everybody who's joined us. Please do feel free to let me know, what do you guys think are some of the best reasons to be able to go to grad school? I'd love to hear from you guys in terms of what you think. So, okay, so those are the 5 best reasons, right? Now I've got the 5 worst reasons. Okay. And these are ones that I hear all the time, by the way, right? These are not attributable to any single individual. This is literally like 17 years of me doing this almost. No, it is 17 years. It's crazy, right? Yeah, 18 years this year. It's crazy. All right. I hear it all the time, right? So let's go ahead and go through it. Number 1 is that you're the first in your family to go. I'm a first generation immigrant. I know so many of my friends are not only first generation immigrants, but they're the first ones in their family to ever go to college, right? Like ever, right? I have friends who are the first ones in their family to ever graduate high school. You guys probably do too, right? So like first to graduate secondary school. It's a huge deal for them to be able to go right to grad school for the first time. In my nuclear family, I'm the first one who went and got the doctorate, right? Like that's a big deal. It's almost like a family milestone or something, especially for those of us like myself, who are first generation immigrants to any country, right? And so that's the thing, is that sometimes when you're the first in your family to go, or you want to inspire other members of your family, you say, I'm going to go and I'm going to get the doctorate, or I'm going to go and I'm going to get that master's. even though that doctorate, that master's is not actually going to help you in your life. It's not going to get you further in your career path. It's going to sound fancy, which we'll get to in a little bit, right? But that's pretty much it. And you're doing it to set some kind of a precedent in your family, right? That is a bad reason to go to graduate school, right? I guarantee you that your family, your future family for yourself and, extended family, they will be way more impressed you making a good life for yourself, being a good human being, and being able to succeed without the doctorate or without the master's and make a thriving life for yourself than for you to have a huge opportunity cost of the years that you go and spend on the master's or the doctorate, right? That's a bad reason to go to graduate school. So if you're only going, especially if you're willing to make compromises to say things like, well, I'm going to go to a school that nobody's ever heard of. It's a private university. It's going to cost me, like if you want to do in the US, we have these things called PsyD programs, right? There's some PsyD programs, $250,000. Are you out of your mind? No, right? You're not going to go spend $250,000 for a psych degree, right? As a psychologist, I'm telling you, that's insane. No, you're not going to do that. I won't let you do that. It's a really bad decision, right? I'm telling you, like I will literally fly to where you are, right, and find you and smack you upside the head, right? If you spend $250,000 on a psych degree, right, and they're from a school that nobody's ever heard of, just because you want to help people, right? Everybody wants to help people. I want to help people, right? It's not a good reason to be a psychologist to be able to say I want to help people. You can help people in a bajillion ways. You have to be a psychologist, right? But that drives me nuts, right? So being the first in your family to go is not a good reason. Okay, number one. The second one is if all of your friends or if all of your family members went to graduate school and you're like the only person who didn't go to graduate school, right? This happens all the time. Legit all of the time, especially if there's some kind of a sibling rivalry. So let's say that you've got, you and you've got a brother or a sister, right? And they ended up going to graduate school and you went to undergrad and you don't know why, but you've got this complex where you think that, the family member is more loved than I am, or, whatever it happens to be. So I need to go, I need to match them. I need to one up them maybe. So if they did a master's, I'm going to go and get the doctorate, right? This is a very juvenile way of thinking, right? I have a sister who I love very, very much. My sister has 2 master's degrees. Super proud of her, right? So for me, I've got 2 doctoral degrees. Who cares? It legit does not matter. Like I am telling you right now, right? It's just one of these situations where, let's say, maybe one of your parents, like my father, went to Harvard Business School, right? So he's got a Harvard MBA, right? And the idea or whatever is like, oh, I need to go to an Ivy League school, or I need to do X, Y, and Z. I need to go to a fancy name school so that I'm not going to live in my father's shadow, right? I think that when I was very young, maybe when I was like 18 to 21, when I did undergrad, I probably had some of that. Like I'm just sure that I did somewhere knocking around in there. A lot of young men, right, who, look at their fathers. You always want to do better than your father, right? This is just some natural, I'm sure, Oedipal type thing, whatever, this natural thing, right? So it's one of these things that has to do with dominance. It has to do with the wound that every man has, right? So every woman has a wound, every man has a wound. The wound that every man has, it's a deep question that men are always trying to answer, whether they tell you or not, is, am I worthy, right? This is the reason why men care so deeply about feeling respected, right? This is just like every man's got that complex, right? Am I worthy? Am I worthy of other people's love? Am I worthy of other people's respect? And these sorts of things. And so obviously one of the ways this manifests is trying to prove our worth first and foremost to our family members, specifically that patriarch of the family, i.e. our fathers, right? Usually. So anyway, just one of these things, right? So another reason not to go to grad school in that sense, which is now one of my 5, but like to impress like a parent or to like shove it in your parent's face or something like this. It's a terrible reason to go to graduate school, right? Just don't do that. It doesn't make sense, right? Welcome to everybody who's just joined us. Thank you guys so much for coming. And guys, anything that you guys think in terms of the best reasons or the worst reasons to go to grad school, put it in the chat. I want to read it. And hold all of your guys' questions. You can even type the questions in now if you have them for me on literally any subject. And I will get to them here in just a few minutes, okay? So here we go, because we'll have some Q&A, at least I would say 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how much time we got. Okay, so some additional ones, right? Number 3, a terrible reason to go to grad school is you want to be called Dr. Whatever, right? I always halfway jokingly say that, first of all, you're going to get over it really, really fast, right? So I've got 2 doctorates. I don't care. You shouldn't care. Nobody cares, right? If somebody says that there's like, I was on a plane or whatever, I was flying to go and see Daria, And they were like, is there a doctor on the plane? And like literally, all I can think to myself is like, not that kind of doctor, right? Because like legit, all I can think to myself is like, if somebody dies, God forbid, if somebody dies on this plane, I cannot save them from dying, but everybody around who just saw that person die, right, who has like a complex because of the trauma of that, I can help them. So there is that kind of doctor on the plane, but unfortunately, the person who's going to pass away, I got nothing. Right, like I can't help them at all. Right, I'm powerless over that. Luckily, I got a lot of family members who are medical doctors, so hopefully one of them is on the plane with me so that they can help out. Right, but that's the thing is, in terms of being called doctor, I get called Mister all the time. Right, I don't care at all. It does not. I got two doctors. It doesn't make me better than anybody else. Right, it won't make you better than anybody else. So if that's why you're doing the doctorate to think that you're better than other people, is a terrible reason. Right, it's not good, guys, right? But here's the thing, right? I halfway jokingly say it, but I do think it's true that most of the time you're going to get called doctor twice in your life in terms of two big occasions. The first occasion is the day that you get the doctorate, and your friends and your family are going to come, and you're going to get the hood, or you're going to get whatever it is, and they're going to come up to you and be like, "Hey, Doctor Singh, hey, doctor," right? And the second time you're going to get called doctor is anytime you do something stupid for the rest of your life. You're going to forget your passport at home, and you know what's going to happen when you go to the airport, and everybody's going to be like, "Hey, Doctor Singh, are you kidding me? You forgot the passport at home? Good job, Doctor Singh," right? They're just going to say it, sarcastically for pretty much like the rest of your life. Also, not impressive or whatever to have the doctorate in terms of if you're just trying to like impress your partner. So impress your spouse, impress your boyfriend, impress your girlfriend, whoever it is. They'll probably be impressed initially when they meet you, but after a while, no, you're just the guy who, apparently leaves his clothes everywhere and can't find the hamper to put his socks in. Right. So it's like, doesn't matter how many degrees you've got, it's not going to do anything. Okay. So yeah, if you want to be called doctor, just don't do it, guys. It's just not worth it. The amount of opportunity cost for you to spend that many years getting the degree, it's just not a good idea. Okay. So that's number three. Number four, worst reason to be able to get a doctorate is you want to move up in your job and feel that a better degree would help, right? This is a dangerous one, right? Because in some cases, you're right. Within the company that you're in or the institution you're in, sometimes you work for a government agency. Whatever it happens to be, though, right? Sometimes we're misled, like we mislead ourselves to believing that another degree is going to help me somehow, but we don't really think about it because there is logic to it. There is logic to the idea that if we get another degree, that we'll be able to kind of like command more money. We will be able to negotiate more efficiently, whatever it happens to be. Okay. But it's not necessarily true. My recommendation is that you go to a site like LinkedIn or you go to somebody in HR. You need to go to somebody within the institution, within the company, to be able to see, is it true that individuals who have a particular type of degree move up faster, or whether people with that degree, are they preferred for certain types of positions, maybe a management position, for instance, whatever it happens to be, a supervisor position, a C-suite executive position, right? Whatever it happens to be. The idea is that you need to determine that first. For example, I remember growing up, I legit, because my dad was an MBA. If you don't know what an MBA is, it's a master's of business administration. There's all sorts of different, MBAs. There's an executive MBA, there's marketing MBAs, there's all sorts of different types of MBAs, right? So my dad was Harvard MBA, and it's one of these things where like I thought that if you wanted to be in business, you needed an MBA, and there was no way you would ever get the knowledge to start a business if you didn't have an MBA. And sure enough, I have so many of my friends who I value deeply who went and got MBAs. And when I talk to them now, virtually all of them tell me that it made little to no difference whatsoever relative to the amount of money they spent and the number of years that they lost doing the MBA when they could have just been getting practical experience, right? Somebody I was talking to literally yesterday was telling me about their daughter, and the daughter wants to go and get an undergraduate degree in art, and she wants to be an artist. And I think that's super cool that she wants to do that. But when I asked, what kind of art does she want to do? And she's like, I have absolutely no idea. She doesn't know what she wants to do for the undergraduate years, and she has no clue who she is, and these things, which happens to a lot of people, right? But I don't think that's a good reason to be able to go and get a degree in that. right? I think that you should go and spend $10 in late fees, renewing books over and over again at the local library, reading as much as you can. You can go and find courses that you really love at different universities. Look at the syllabi, right? Find out what are the readings for each week and go and do those readings, right? Like, this is not a bad idea until you can figure out if you're in that kind of a career field, right? Where you don't necessarily need the degree, right? But you should really find out first what you want to be doing before you kind of jump into the deep end on these things. Especially in the US right now, having some sort of like private school degree is like a Louis Vuitton bag, right? There's this guy, Scott Galloway, who I love from NYU Stern, so school of business there. And he talks about that, this idea of, higher education having become a luxury brand here in the United States, at least, and internationally to a certain extent. And I really do, I really feel what he's saying when he says that, because I see that legit all the time, right? So make sure that you take a look before you make the assumption that having one more degree is going to do something for you. Always walk into grad school with both of your eyes wide open. Understand the financial difficulties, understand the benefits for your future life, understand the challenges that you may have in your personal life, right? Going through this process. For example, I was somebody who, for my first doctorate, I got into a romantic relationship when I was doing the doctorate, and I was so young. I mean, this was like, what, 15 years ago. But this was a terrible decision, right? This is a terrible decision. That thing didn't last for long anyway. But the thing is that it was a real challenge because we were going through so much at the exact same time. We realistically didn't have emotional energy for each other. We didn't have time for each other. You name it. I mean, perfect storm for these things to kind of like just go away. Same thing if it's something that like you and your partner, right? Both of you, right, have been to graduate, or one of you, let's say, has been to graduate school in the past. This is a good example. One of you has been to graduate school in the past, right? And you graduated and you're done. The other person says, I want to go to grad school now. But the thing is that if somebody's gone, especially done a doctorate, the last thing they want to do is to vicariously do another degree, right? Through their partner. This is really tough to accept, but it's true. So it's like, that's really challenging as well. They know that they're not going to be emotionally taken care of for a number of years when things kick off for you, doing especially a doctoral degree, doing the doctorate. You're not going to be emotionally available for them. You're going to have a lot of hardship. It's going to be a lot of pressure on them. It's just something to take into consideration because people usually don't end up thinking about that. Or if it's the case where, in terms of the doctorate, I mean, this is especially doctoral degrees. If it's the case where both of you have gotten these degrees before and then you want to start a family, there's kind of sweet spots in terms of timing for those things to happen. And again, when I talked about the best reasons to go to grad school, if you don't have those responsibilities yet, right? Fantastic. People ask me all the time. They're just like, keys to your success, Dr. Singh, what are they? And I was like, when I was doing most of my work, I was single and childless. Dun, da, da, right? I hate to say that that's the reason, but that is a massive reason why. I am not telling anybody that that's the right thing to do, but I know for myself that those were the keys to the kingdom, right? And now, of course, I'm able to, enjoy a wonderful relationship and everything is way more stable than it's ever been in my entire life, which is awesome. But at the same time, you had to sacrifice a lot. I had to sacrifice a lot to be able to get to that point, okay? And the last, what I believe to be the worst reason to go to grad school is if you feel bored or you feel lost. Sometimes the world can feel like a giant abyss and you just don't know what on earth is going on with yourself. I've been there. I get it. When I was in grad school, and I always talk about clinical depression, anxiety rates in grad students, right? So it's 44% in women, about 38% for men. So the likelihood that you're going to get some sort of a mental health problem in grad school is pretty sizable, right? So it's, over a third up to almost like a half. That's not great, right? And that's why on this channel, we talk a lot about maximizing protective factors before you actually end up going to graduate school, right? But feeling lost is pretty normal. When I was in grad school at the very end, so I definitely had clinical depression and clinical anxiety. Like, I can tell you, like, straight up. So if you're going through that, I get it. I was there, right? Definitely watch the channel video on how to combat depression. right, in graduate school, right? So in that one, I tell you about my experience and how I was able to get out of that. I was depressed for quite some time, but I'm very lucky. I have not been clinically depressed in a very, very long time, right? And I want you to remember that maybe you're not in psych, so maybe you don't know about what I'm about to explain. There's this thing called the diathesis stress or diathetic stress model of of any kind of pathology, but let's just say mental health problems. The idea here, think about it like a gun, okay? So the idea here is that, you've got your, God, see, this just shows you how little I know about guns, apparently, right? Is it the hammer? What am I thinking of? The back, it's not cocking the trigger, it's cocking somebody tell me in the chat window. I'm terrible with guns, apparently, right? I'm cocking the gun, right? And then I'm actually firing the gun, right? Cocking the gun is the equivalent of you having essentially a genetic predisposition, so a biological predisposition. This is what we call a diathesis, right? A biological predisposition to developing mental health problems. Could be anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, anything, right? But sometimes just having the genotype doesn't mean that you're going to have the phenotype, that you're going to phenotypically display signs and symptoms of the major mental illness, okay? Doesn't necessarily mean that. But the thing is that if there is a significant stressor, it could be that your parents get divorced. It could be that you're going to graduate school, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It could be there's a breakup between you and a partner that you thought you were going to marry. It could be one of your best friends dying. It could be a massive stressor of any kind, right? If the genotype is already there and then that stressor happens, the gun fires, and all of a sudden that genotype expresses itself. Right. And this is why people like myself, who never had any mental health problems his entire life before grad school, all of a sudden you start to see that. And it doesn't mean that you're weak, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean any of those silly things. Right. I know that for me, when I was in grad school, when I started, feeling really depressed and this kind of stuff, this for me, I was just like, this is not a manly thing. This is, one of these things, be tough, get over it, and these sorts of things. So trust me, if you're feeling that right now, I get it. I'm with you. Right, I completely understand kind of that idea. Is very difficult to grapple with, right? And it's something where seeking help is a really great thing for you to be able to do. So anyway, we all feel lost at certain times in life, and sometimes what we do. And I have a lot of friends who did this. I have mentees who have done this, right? Who they go to grad school because they don't know what else to do. And maybe it's something where they're really blessed and they don't have any major life responsibilities, and maybe their family or somebody else is paying for it. The worst case scenario is that you just take on an epic amount of student loan debt, but you don't quite know why you're doing it, right? You just do it because you feel like you don't have anything better to do. You just don't know what else is kind of going on, right? That is super duper difficult. Yeah. Arian is saying it's true. Fun fact: grad school is more expensive than a 4-year university. Dude, legit. Yeah, it's so true, right? I mean, yeah, some 4-year universities are insane. Like I mentioned, depending on where you go to grad school, it can be different. Like I said, my second doctorate was only 500 euros, right, in Germany. My first doctorate from Oxford was, crazy expensive, right? But that's the thing, is that you have to take cost into consideration, which is something that like people really don't like to do because it's not sexy and it's not fun. And frankly, I probably sound like one of your parents right now in terms of even saying something like that. But as somebody who was not financially savvy until I was 30, this is one of these things that I really care about for you guys, is making sure that you don't make financial mistakes that are going to bite you in the butt for like a long time to come, right? I really care that that doesn't happen to you. So if you are thinking to yourself, why go to grad school? And the answer is, I don't know. I'm not sure what else to do right now. So I figure I'll just go. It's not a good reason to go to grad school. To be honest with you, the odds are very high that you will be rejected from every legitimate program. And you will end up going somewhere where you'll get the letters after your name and get the degree, but it will essentially be a meaningless degree, right? This is why, unless there are very specific circumstances, I do not like online doctoral programs. If it is a program that is clinical in nature and it is online only, please do not, for the sake of your future patients, do not go to that program. The only exception is if it's some kind of a blended program where Some is online and some is in person. If you are not directly interacting with supervisors or with people that can help you launch you into your career and get you a ton of practical experience, etc., and it is especially something in behavioral health, because that's what I can speak on with great confidence, please do not do that. Okay. So that's what I got. 5 best reasons, 5 worst reasons. Anybody who joined us, I'll reread them right now for you and then get your questions ready. I'll try to answer any questions you guys have got if you have any for today. If you don't, it's cool. So 5 best reasons to be able to go to grad school. Number 1, your target career requires it. You have to do it, right? Number 2, you can afford it. No debt, right? Or you can demonstrate to me that it makes financial sense for you to do it, right? The third one is if you don't have personal significant life responsibilities right now. Number 4 is if you were accepted to a top program with a good supervisor. And number 5, you recognize that you can be better and you're committed to learning from others and learning how to learn for yourself for the rest of your life, right? 5 great reasons. Okay, 5 worst reasons to be able to go are you're the first in your family to go. All of your friends or family members went. You want to be called doctor. You want to move up in your job and feel that a degree would help without having done your homework. And number 5 is you just kind of say, I'm bored. I feel really lost. I'm hoping that I will find myself at some point during this journey. Okay. So that's what I got for you guys. 5 best reasons, 5 worst reasons. You guys tell me right now, do you guys have any questions? It can be literally about anything. It can be about grad school. It can be about undergrad. It can be about what to do this summer. It can be about literally anything you guys want. I've got some time here. I got about 15 minutes. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, I'm for it. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at the chat window right now here. Let's see. So Grace would say, so I asked Grace, what she thought would be like a good reason. So Grace says, love the field and want to contribute to it through research. This might be a good reason. I agree. It's one of these things where in terms of research, awesome. Oh, Lyric, you're so welcome. It's good to see you. So Lyric sometimes comes. It's great to see Lyric. Okay. So in terms of like loving the field, right? This is something where you guys know my story probably. I was 12 when I knew I wanted to be a psychologist. And probably a lot of you have a similar story like that, which I think is super cool. Some of you discovered what you really want to go to grad school for when you were an undergrad. Also cool, right? But some of us, it goes way, way back, right? And in terms of contributing to it through research, just remember that the 2 best things you can do in terms of wanting to contribute to research are take as many stats classes as you can, and as many research methods classes as you can. Remember my story? I hate stats. I hate research methods. And I ended up becoming a statistics professor, right? Because I ended up realizing down the line that those are the keys to the kingdom. Because if you can call bullshit on other researchers by knowing what they did right, but also identifying the things that they, and in your field, maybe even systematically, are doing wrong methodologically, right? That's cool. That's a cool thing. That to me is just as cool as when I was in those alternative rock bands with my long hair and stuff, right? This is like the adult version of going to a rave. It's calling out people methodologically for their statistical fallacies, which, yes, is the nerdiest thing that I've said all week. So that's the idea, I would say, more than anything else, right? Is yes, one to contribute to it through research is awesome. Remember, at the end of the day, the magic number, guys, right? Which again, eyes wide open, right? Is that it takes an average of 17 years for 14% of the research literature to be converted from research into practice. In other words, if you end up writing up some sort of, let's say, a clinical study, right, the likelihood it will make an impact on practice is less than 1%. Luckily, there's a lot of stuff you can do to max out the odds that you're going to be one of the articles in that 1%. If you ever want to learn about kind of all of that, translating research into practice and policy, just take the course on, so it's Publication Academy. It's publicationacademy.com, right? And Publication Academy is the premier online learning suite if you want to learn how to be able to publish in high impact peer-reviewed journals, learn how to be able to get academic book contracts, learn how to be able to write winning grant proposals, so on and so forth. Publication Academy is the best. So, okay, and there's a course on there called I think it's Best Practices in Translating Research into Practice and Policy. And for everybody watching, if you're in grad school right now, take the course. I teach it. It's one of the best ones. And it's all about how to be able to take your master's thesis or your doctoral dissertation and get a whole bunch of publications out of it. How do you do that, right? That's the best way to be able to take a look. Take that class on Publication Academy. Okay. If you need a discount on it, just let me know. Just send me an email. Okay. Because I care about you guys. I want you to take the damn classes. Okay. I don't care about the money. Take the damn classes. Okay. So here we go. Other things. Grace says my reasons to go to grad school are a mix of good reasons and bad reasons. Yeah, Grace, for most of us, for me too. I get it. Okay. Barcio says thanks for sharing your advice and academic challenges, my friend. Your channel has been an inspiration for all. Oh, thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. Really, really appreciate it. Awesome. Okay, guys. Any additional questions before I let you go? I'll wait for like 2 minutes just to be able to check. Let's see. Gomor says, Dr. Singh, yesterday I had an interview. Admissions committee asked me only 4 questions. Interesting. Is that okay? In my statement of purpose, I answered all the required questions. Okay, that's great. So, made something that I've never mentioned on this channel, right? So, I hold the departmental record at Oxford for Department of Psychiatry for the fastest doctoral dissertation defense, right? My defense was 24 minutes, and that's it. Right. And the reason why is that if you guys ever watch the one video is really taken off right now, it's how to prepare for a master's thesis defense. And there's another one on how to prepare for a doctoral dissertation defense. I'm thinking of actually making a video that's similar to those mock interview videos that I make about like a mock doctoral dissertation like review, review defense, and a mock doctoral dissertation defense and mock master's thesis defense, right? So I'll build some of those for you guys. Those sorts of ones I really like to do it. Downstairs is the studio. I like to do those really professionally, have them professionally edited, so these are, I do for fun with you guys. But for those ones, I, try to step it up a little bit too. So I totally get it in terms of not being asked many questions. If you remember them, can you tell me what the questions were? If you happen to remember any of them, right, would be great or whatever, so that I can give some little bit more color to it. Okay. But if you're only asked 4 questions, then that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? And remember that there's all sorts of reasons that could be. It could be that legit they have interviewed so many people that they're exhausted and they're only going to ask the critical things and then they're going to like call it a day, right? Or you could be one of their finalists and they didn't see the need to be able to ask you a lot of questions, right? Or it could be something that this is a very unique school and because or a unique program, and because of that, they only have 4 questions that they ask everybody in terms of a standard protocol, right? And in some cases, when you give an answer to a question, right, they were exhausted. Yeah, man, I'm not surprised. Especially at this time of the year, people usually are like, they're either doing a ton of interviews every day to be able to like finish. You were the last person. Oh man, they probably just want to get you the hell out of that place, right? I can neither confirm nor deny that in some cases in the past I've been in the same boat of wanting to be like, this it's just got to be over, right? So that's probably it. So is it okay to be honest with you in that case if you know you were the last person? It's okay, really. I promise. I promise. But I would love to hear what the questions are that they asked you. But yeah, in the statement of purpose, you answered all the required questions, right? Which is great, right? And obviously, depending on how you answered them and these sorts of things, it's either the case where they just want to get you the hell out of there as quickly as possible, or it's the case where they're like, this person clearly knows what they're talking about. They helped us out so much already, and to be honest with you, they probably made the decision before you even went in there, and you basically either had you could only lose it about your research project. Okay, cool. So if the question was about, or the questions were about your research project, then it's something where, again, what they're trying to evaluate about primary sources. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you mean primary sources made, such as, asking you about like, so tell me what primary sources like led to you deciding that this would be a good idea, right, for let's say a dissertation project or a thesis process project and so forth, right? Then they're just trying to make sure that you know the literature. A big thing, guys, for grad school, especially if it's a research, especially if it's a research degree, is that you really need to know your niche research literature. You should not be applying to a ton of programs, right? You guys know me, 3 to 5 programs. For the love of God, 3 to 5 programs, right? These people are applying to like 10 to 20 programs. Out of your mind, right? You're going to burn yourselves out. I don't want that to happen to you, right? And the thing is, it's not possible to do a good job applying to 10 to 20 programs. Not possible. Why? Because you need to develop personal relationships with the professors. And the way to do that is to be able to read a ton of their literature over the last 2 to 3 years, right? Where they're the first author, the senior author. And in addition to that, you need to get to know them personally. I do not mean send them an email saying, I really love your stuff. I want to be your student. And then you're like, peace. No, okay? You need to get introduced to them by somebody who's some sort of like middleman who has some sort of a connection with the person, or you need to go to the conferences that they go to. You need to ask them to breakfast, you ask them to lunch, get a drink with them at a poster session, whatever it happens to be. You need to have loss leaders like paying the money to be able to get out to wherever they are. Let's say you live in LA and they're in Oklahoma, where you're getting into a car and driving to frickin' Oklahoma, okay? To be able to meet these people. This is important. The odds of getting in, guys, to these programs these days is nuts. Remember, for clinical psych PhD programs, legit last year was 0.5 to 2%. That's crazy. That's wild, right? So if you want to be one of those people to be able to get in, and you have in some cases a 99% chance of rejection, you got to do something to be in the top percentile of everybody else, right? It's really hard to stand out. And so that's the thing. If you apply to too many programs, guys, again, you can't devote that much time, right? And also kind of carry on with your life, especially if you're already doing undergrad, right? 3 to 5 programs is the sweet spot, and then spend a huge amount of time on those 3 to 5 scholars that you really want to work with. Okay. And if you guys need help in terms of figuring out who your target supervisor should be, and hence what your target program should be, etc., right? For the love of God, please set up a time or whatever. Let's go ahead. We can talk. You can book a session here. It's www.drphoenixsingh.com, right? It's on most of my videos, right? And we can talk about exactly how to do this. Now is the right time. It is going to be too late in approximately, I'm making this in June 12th. It will be too late come mid to late August, right? The second that September hits, you're screwed. Why? Because every professor under the sun, right, is going to be getting so many emails from so many people that yours will not stand out whatsoever. And if you want to meet with them, or if you want to have, especially something like a Zoom call, this guy, it's not going to happen, right? The odds of it happening are so low, because all of the professors who are taking students usually are going to get bombarded with emails around that time. So we got to get you to stand out now, and we need to implement those strategies now. Okay. So anyway, just a little note on that. Let's see. Tanya says, hey, Tanya. Tanya says, when doing a master's program with an option to do either a thesis or a comprehensive, thesis, for the love of God. Tanya, thesis. Okay. Comprehensive exam. Yeah. Thesis. Why? Because you can publish a thesis. Right. And if you want to do a doctorate, because I mean, if you're doing a thesis and the doctorate in your field is something where there would be some kind of a research component, you want to show that you have the capacity to do that, that you can take a project from the beginning to the end in terms of a research project, right? Taking a comprehensive exam, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Getting publications, getting conference presentations, especially at the master's level, right? Conference papers, please, right? Not posters, okay? If you're doing the master's. Conference papers, where not at local conferences, not at state conferences. I want you going to national conferences or international conferences where your target supervisor frequently goes. Okay, those are the ones I want you to go to, even if it's one that frankly is like not one that's very reputable, but your target supervisor goes there all the time for God knows what reason. Maybe it's always in the Bahamas. And the person's just like, the professor's like, my husband loves the Bahamas. We're just going to go to the freaking Bahamas every single year to go to this conference. Fair enough. Go to the Bahamas, right? To be able to go and see that person and get to know them, right? And even if they're not there that year, when they take a look at your CV, they're going to say, they go to the Bahamas too. Sweet. Right? That's the thing, right? Again, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And it's the same thing for grad supervisors and their students, right? That's the most important thing to us, is that you're somebody that we could get along with for the next 4 to 6 years of our lives, right? And for you as well, you got to get along with us, right? It's critical. So that's what I would say. Don't do a comprehensive exam. Nobody cares, right? Nobody cares about how you do on a comprehensive exam. Sorry. Right? Thesis. Show that you can write academically, show that you can get a paper published. Again, conference paper, and little life hack. If you are going to get something published like that, if you can get your target doctoral supervisor involved on the publication, if they say, oh, sorry, I'm too busy, invite one of their postdocs. They're too busy, invite one of their graduate students. Get some skin in the game, yo. Right? Remember what I always say is that come bearing gifts. If you go to them and you say, I have something to offer, right, in the form of like, I'm doing this publication, and it's right in your wheelhouse, and it's with the population that you work with on a clinical phenomenon or a practical phenomenon that you're really interested in, and it uses a methodology or it uses some sort of equipment that is the bread and butter of your lab. Would you like to do this with me? even if they say no, that is so much more impressive than sending an email saying, I really want to work with you. Or even worse, can I please be part of a paper or research project you've got going on? Excellent. Tanya, it's a pleasure. Right. So it's like, can you please, give me something? That's the worst. Right. If we ever go with our hands out saying, please give me something, you look weak. Right. But if you've already got something going on and you say, I love your work, it would be an honor to be able to work with you. This is what I've got going on. I know you're incredibly busy. Is this something that you would have any interest in? You don't go, though, and say, like, I've got this research project that I'm working on. And if you'd like to be a part of it, it'd be a pleasure to have you. No, 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 no. Remember, you're not the code general, right? You're the soldier. They're the general, right? Academics are super egotistical, right? Just stroke the ego, and, go to town, right? It's a good thing. Okay, so Grace says, and guys, everybody, welcome who's just joined us. Please do smash that like button, help the channel out. And let me read Grace's question. If you guys have questions, I got a few more minutes, so please do go ahead and ask, and I'm more than happy to answer. Okay, Grace says, during my undergrad as a research assistant in different labs, I was assigned mostly with insignificant. Grace, welcome to RA-ship, right? The number of ridiculous things I was asked to do as an RA, as an undergrad, like, we could fill Santa's list. It was long. Okay. So is that common, and how is PhD research different from undergrads? Okay, that's a great question. Okay. So any kind of doctoral research, grad school in general, it could be master's, could be doctoral research, but especially PhD research, right? Remember that it's like hard to explain, but if you are doing undergraduate level research, there is this assumption, and it's not a fair assumption, but it is the universal assumption that's made, right? That undergraduates essentially wouldn't understand, even if we did teach them, they wouldn't understand, and that is bullshit. But it is also what a lot of people, especially OG old school professors, think. And so because of that, they say, I've got my postdocs. Under the postdocs, I got the grad students. And then we've got undergrads where basically there's a trade. We need the slave labor, and in exchange, you'll get a letter of recommendation that very likely I didn't write, but instead a postdoc or a grad student wrote it. Right? I'm not talking about me myself. I'm talking about, this generic grad school supervisor or whatever, right? Or, generic professor in general who would be writing your letter of recommendation, right? And maybe we'll put you on as a co-author on a poster if we're going to be nice. But the odds of actually getting a publication is exceptionally low. It's crazy. At some universities that I've worked at, even like the idea of an undergrad asking if there's an opportunity to get published is seen as like, oh, so disrespectful. It's not disrespectful, right? But you should know that if you do ask that, there is the possibility that you'll be perceived as disrespectful. To be honest with you, if I was you, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care. Right? Because it's something that will make you stand out so much. It is one of these things where, you do need to have, a little bit of like steel your heart, like really strengthen yourself so that when you go and ask, and if people are not very nice to you because they're just like, no, we couldn't do that. We don't do that here. Right. And then you say, but I still really want to work in the lab, but I really want to get a publication. And then you're like, what should I do? That's a tough situation. If you ever find yourself in that situation, that's a very one-on-one thing, and not something to kind of air in public. So if you ever want to talk about a situation like that, just pop onto the website or whatever and book sessions. We can talk about it, and we can actually figure out what to do together, because that's a very unique situation that I've helped a lot of people with, but that's super unique. Okay. Doctoral level research is very different because the assumption is that you have the capacity to do what, remember, like I said, Grace, right? If 99% of people are getting rejected and you're the top 1% versus undergrads, you can have I don't know, I went to Tufts or whatever. I think we have 4,000 students. So it's like, okay, you got 4,000 people who could be undergrads, and everybody and their mother wants to be a psychologist for God knows what reason. And so we had, many, many, many hundreds of psych majors, or double majors where psych was one of the majors. And what happened was, because of that, there were so many people who wanted to be research assistants. And so, we ended up with labs with way too many RAs, buzzing around here, there, and everywhere, doing all these tiny, insignificant tasks, I would argue, right? Making photocopies and moving stuff around and these sorts of things, right? And Grace says, yeah, my experience as a research assistant makes my heart so much stronger. You got to be, Grace, right? It's one of those things. But here's the thing. When you end up going and doing doctoral level research, again, the first year of grad school is going to be one of the best years of your life in terms of the doctorate. And that's the thing, is that, you guys are going to watch these videos, and then you're going to come back to me and you're going to be like, Dr. Singh, you were so wrong or whatever. It's grad school. It's like really straightforward and I'm having such a great time and these things. But then after the first year, what ends up happening is that you are no longer the young buck, right? There's a new cohort that's going to come behind you. They're the ones who are going to be exploring the city that you live in. They're going to be the ones who are, new kids on the block, etc., right? When that happens, they are going to hit the gas on you, right? And when that happens, usually this is kind of the oh shit moment, right? And this is when you're going to start to see how grad school is different than undergrad. The pressure is going to crank up. Everybody's grades in grad school suck. And let me tell you right now, nobody gives a shit, right? About grades in grad school, okay? I was straight A student all the way through, I had 3.96 GPA undergrad, graduated in 3 years, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter, right? In grad school, grades don't matter, right? If you end up getting a C, just make sure you don't fail out or anything like that, right? Curry Love, just how early? Okay, gotcha. I'll answer a bit. So it's one of these things where, in terms of graduate level research, you need to learn everything. And the most important thing is you need to know exactly why in research you did what you did. Worst thing that you can ever say is my grad school supervisor told me to do it. That's why I use hierarchical linear modeling. That's why I use sequential regression. That's why I use whatever, structural equation modeling, right? Because my supervisor said that was the thing to do for this kind of design, so I did it. You need to know why you did what you did, and you need to be able to defend it with every sinew of your body, right? And you need to know about all the alternatives that you could have used instead, methodologically, as well as in terms of statistical analysis. And you need to explain why you didn't use those other things. That's really hard. I didn't know how to do that, right? Nobody does when they get into grad school, right? So, why did you use Kaplan-Meier curves instead of Cox regression? And, well, a Cox regression, why did you use logistic regression? Or Enter method, why didn't you use backward stepwise regression? Or, for that matter, why didn't you use forward stepwise regression? You need to know the answers to those questions. And that is super duper tough, right? If you're an undergraduate, basically, in terms of being a research assistant, it's like, okay, I'll just, do what I'm told to do. That's what I did, right? You just do what you're told to do. Sometimes you ask questions and you get answers to them, but you're not expected to defend what you did, even if you do some sort of like a capstone project. So I did like a senior honors thesis, my final year of undergrad, which was a research project. It was on like face morphing and emotion recognition in children and adults as like an age in group effect study or some such thing. But that was the thing, right? Is that I was not expected to know all the alternatives. I was just expected to know, it's like, this is what we did. Here was the analysis, so on and so forth. And that was kind of it. Okay. Monique, great to see you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Okay. So, Grace, hopefully that helps. In terms of Curry Love, which, by the way, I love the name. Curry Love is great. So let's see. Curry Love says, how early should I apply for faculty jobs? Honest answer, the second that they get listed. Right. Whenever they end up getting listed, I would take a minimum of 1 calendar week after something is officially posted, right, to be able to apply. You don't want to apply, even if you stay up all night and you write up all your application materials, you write up your, pedagogical statement, and you write your cover letter, and you get your CV in order, and you get all your publications, your portfolio, whatever it happens to be for that given faculty position, whatever it happens to be. People won't believe you that you spent a lot of time on it. So wait at least 1 calendar week before you apply once something is posted. Take a look, depending on the country that you're in, right? There's going to be all sorts of different job boards. They could be with professional associations. Thanks, Grace. Right. So professional associations, it could be something where you're looking, like here in the US, like Chronicles of Higher Education, higheredjobs.com is a good one, ResearchGate these days, academia.edu, all of these different sites, right? They get paid a lot of money by these universities to be able to post new faculty positions, right? Usually they're not allowed to post them for free. So that's the idea, right? But in terms of how early you should apply, if it's a postdoc, usually they give you a little bit more running room as well. But remember that if it's a tenure track position, only 20% of all new faculty positions these days are tenure track positions. Adjunct positions, as you know, I am not a huge believer in unless you want it as a side gig because you love to teach. You love to teach, right? And you're willing to basically volunteer your time because you're going to be making so little money, right? So that's what I would say. But yeah, the sooner the better. The sooner the better is what I would say on that, but at least 7 days. Okay. So Katie asks, hey, Katie, Katie says, hello, would you recommend continuing working in labs as an RA where there are publication opportunities to take a research coordinator role during a gap year? Katie, what a question. Okay, research coordinator role, if it is with the individual who you want to go to grad school with, right? Or even if it's something where it's just in the same department, even if it's not with the same scholar. Or if the scholar that you're going to be working for is not in the same department, not at the same university, but is somehow BFFs, right? Like best friends, best buddies, strong connection, preferably former colleague, preferably former author, co-principal investigator, something with the target grad school supervisor, right? Then forget the publication opportunities, personal connections all the way. If I had to choose between personal connections with the target supervisor or publication, no doubt the first one. Okay, personal connections. Yeah, there are publication opportunities. Keep in mind, if it's a gap year, just remember also, Katie, that like peer review takes an average of like 6 to 8 months to be able to go through the process, right? Some journals significantly less, some journals significantly more. My one colleague in Sweden or whatever for a leading medical journal called me a few weeks ago, 2 years for his piece to be able to just be in press, not published, in press, right? That's wild. Right. But just keep that in mind that if you've got 12 months, and the likelihood is that if it's in 12 months, you're going to be applying after that. It's not really 12 months, more like 6 months. Right. So the best you can hope is not to get a full publication. It's to be able to get, one paper, maybe even 2 papers where you can actually, prove your worth as a research assistant and then actually convert that to manuscripts that end up getting submitted. Again, please remember, guys, that in terms of getting publications, you do not have to be first author on a publication. And I under no circumstances recommend that with no supervision, no guidance, and just somebody in your lab saying, "Oh, you can go ahead and write up something as a manuscript, and you're allowed to publish that." And to just think that you can publish something in a peer-reviewed journal, guys, I've been doing this 18 years now, right? I mean, if nothing else, if you really want to do that, just bite the bullet, watch Publication Academy trainings, because that at least is going to give you the templates for the different sections and these things and explain all the strategy for you in terms of how to do this. Guys, I have met people who have been in research for 30 years who struggle to be able to get publishing right. So the odds, I mean, for me, definitely, like as an undergrad of being a first author, no. I was 17th out of 18 authors on a paper, and I was the third of 3 co-authors on a book. Right. And that's really what got me into grad school along in terms of the publication front, along with deep personal connections. And the acceptance rate in my dream program was 0.2%. Right. So I was the only one to get accepted out of over 500 applicants. Right. So it's one of these things where I know how to do it. And that's the game. This is a game. It shouldn't be a game, but it is. Okay. So, Katie, that's what I would say. It's a great question. Okay. Any final questions, guys? I'll give you all 2 minutes or whatever to be able to write in the chat. Otherwise, I will let you go for the day, but I will wait 2 minutes here. And yes, I do have Ochi here. You're welcome, Kate. Oh yeah. And this is my auto shoot. Get a call doctor. See, Victor, don't do it. Don't do it, Doctor. It's a bad reason, Victor. Trust me, nobody cares. Watch the full video. Awesome. Thanks, Chris. All right, guys. I'll go ahead and let you go. It's great to see, as always, everybody. Have a beautiful Saturday night, and I'll talk to you in the next one, okay? Bye-bye.